It's the County Conversation, the Cricketers' weekly podcast covering all things UK domestic cricket. This week we have me, Cameron Ponsonby, as your host, as well as the two Nicks. The first Nick, we have North Middlesex third 11 skipper, fresh off 17 off 9 on the weekend, and newly minted secretary of the Cricket Writers Club, Nick Friend. Congratulations, Nick, and welcome. And back from the fringes is digital editor Nick Howson. Hello to both of you. Nick,
is it congratulations on the 17 or the secretarial duties?
I think both, actually. I quite enjoyed when you gave me a breakdown of your 17. I decided to not let the listeners find out about it because I thought the fact you slog swept someone for 6 needed to remain a secret and quiet and away from the public realm. But something that I think should be in the public realm is that we spoke to Wayne Madsen this week, or more specifically, Nick Howson spoke to Wayne Madsen. Nick, how was he? Why did we talk to him? What did he have to say?
Yeah, well, having Secretary Friend as such an illustrious colleague meant that speaking to someone like Wayne Madsen was easy, slim pickings as far as that's concerned. Yeah, I mean, Wayne, what has Wayne Madsen not achieved? I guess he's been in Div 2 for so long. I think it's 12, 13 of the seasons that he's been at Derbyshire for. What does he not know about batting? And it was really good to get an idea from him about how the game has developed since he's been in it, how he goes about his work these days, what he would change, his regrets. Clearly, his hockey background is a really interesting point from a technical perspective, actually, as much as it is from his sort of outlook on elite sports. We spoke about his faith as well, and his relationship with that, and how it kind of, I guess, helps guide him through this world, really, this weird world of county cricket where you're playing in freezing cold in April and all the way through to the end of September. So, yeah, a really interesting chat. Very much plays into what we're trying to do here on the County Conversation and try and dig into the detail of the sport and not just cover the day-to-day goings on. And, yeah, a really interesting chat that I hope that our listeners and viewers enjoy.
I mean, we have a bit of a kind of Division 2 theme this week. We obviously are speaking to Madsen, but we also kind of have updates from around the ground, Middlesex, Gloucestershire in particular. Nick Friend recently spoke to Mark Allain, the Gloucestershire head coach, and he was down at that ground this week where they've got the hybrid pitch, which I promise you is more interesting than it may sound. It's allowing pace bowlers to bowl quick. Everything that's tailored in county cricket appears to be at the moment to trying to best replicate the situations and the scenarios people face in test cricket, and that hybrid pitch might be one of those reasons. Back to Wayne Madsen. Nick, as Nick Friend, as Nick Howson said, it's very confusing having two people with the same name. Madsen's been there. He's basically part of the furniture. There's this kind of, the overseas player, to my mind at least, appears to be one of two distinct things these days. You either have the eternal globetrotter who does 6 weeks here, 4 weeks there, and kind of is constantly on this conveyor belt, or you have someone like Madsen who I think is it 14 years that he's been at Derbyshire. He's not so much an overseas player as just kind of a local legend, stalwart.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's not an overseas player at all, is he? He has spent a lot of the last decade sort of not talking up, but being available for England. Obviously now represents Italy. But has also played hockey at the Commonwealth Games for South Africa. I genuinely think, I've interviewed Wayne a couple of times over the last few years, and I honestly think he's one of the most interesting people in the game in this country. I mean, he's, as other Nick, I probably don't have to call him that, given my own name, as Nick Howson may mention, he's got a real relationship, he's got a great, I think a really sort of mature relationship with his faith and the way that it sort of guides his career. He has dipped his toe in the franchise water. He's played in the PSL with Multan Sultans. He's got an extraordinary record. I think he's never gone through a first class season in England without 100. He was the second top run scorer in Division 1 in the 1 year that he's ever played in Division 1. Nick and I were talking earlier. I think it was a real argument that he is. Bear in mind that the Championship split into two divisions in 2000, which in which year Derby were actually in Division 1, were relegated from Division 1 2000, and then have basically spent 1 year in Div 1 since, which was 2014 or 13. 2013, which was a few years into Madsen's stint in the UK. I mean, there's a real argument that he's the best player Division 2 has seen in terms of sort of a consistent face. Without having the stats in front of me, I'd be surprised if anyone has scored more runs Division 2 by virtue of, say, having churned them out every year. I think he scored 4 figures in a sort of six first-class summers, say one of which was in Div 1. But and if you look at the guys that scored more runs than him, or scored similar number of runs to in Div 1, so this was 2013, Sam Robson and Gary Ballance, both guys who made their England debuts around that time as well. Like, in a way, Madsen's eligibility for England probably came a bit too late. It was 2 years after that. But a brilliant, honestly, really interesting cricketer. There's still coached a lot of hockey in Derby. I think he coached hockey to Sarah Glenn, the England women's leg spinner as well. He is. So I honestly think there are very few guys with more sort of bows of strings of interest to their bow. And yeah, it's a really good interview that he did with Nick this morning.
Without further ado, why don't we get right into the conversation? This is Nick Howson with Wayne Madsen.
So joining me for this latest interview on the County Conversation is the Ramsbottom, Church, Nelson, Borough Rovers, Haslington, Rishton, Unsworth, Ticknell, Aldley, Carnforth, Edenfield, Dolphins, Koala Zulu Natal, Joburg Super Kings, Molten Sultans, Peshawar Zalmi, Team Abu Dhabi, Bangla Tigers, Manchester Originals, Italy, and of course Derbyshire Batter, the ageless Wayne Madsen. Thank you for joining us, Wayne.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
No, not a problem. Let's pick up actually from one of the more recent events in that cycle and the Yorkshire game, where you obviously scored another 100. I think that was 100 number 47 of your career. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you've been keeping count. But it was a slightly challenging one. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, on the morning of day one, I put down a catch at first slip and did my webbing between my ring finger and my middle finger. Had to make a trip to a couple of A&Es and a plastic surgeon to get it stitched up. Yeah, and sort of eight stitches later, I was ready to go and ready to bat on day 2.
I know this is not going to be great for our podcast listeners, but for our viewers, could you give us a shot of the? Could you give us a juicy shot of the damage?
Well, yeah, I've got photos of. I probably won't show that, but it's obviously under the bandage at the moment. But yeah, it was pretty deep. There were two sort of internal stitches and a couple of external. I actually had a bad night on Friday night as well. I reacted quite badly to the antibiotics, and I spent a couple of hours throwing up in the toilet in the middle of the night. So it wasn't a great Friday night. Slept in, called Mickey in the morning. Slept in until sort of a little bit later just to make sure I had enough rest before day 2. So it was a bit of a tough Friday.
And in terms of, we talk about batting as something you need to focus on, and you're focusing on one ball at a time. How difficult is it to do that when you've got something else going on as well? You've got this blow that you're presumably managing, certainly pain, but you're also conscious of not sort of re-injuring, I guess.
Yeah, I think thankfully it was pretty well protected in the glove. I managed to sort of cut the glove and keep it sort of strapped the two fingers together. Yeah, I mean, the managing the pain, it's just you've just sort of got to deal with it. It wasn't the handle wasn't pressing on the actual cut, so every now and again when I got the bottom of the bat for a Yorker or I didn't hit it cleanly, then I'd obviously feel it. But most of the time I wasn't in too much pain while batting, so I was able to sort of focus and concentrate on what I needed to do, as opposed to sort of worry about the finger, because there were sort of bigger things and faster things traveling at me rather than just worrying about the finger.
It's been a bit of a truncated start to the season, particularly for Derbyshire. You've had games washed out and heavily affected by rain. We talk a lot about how that is difficult for bowlers to deal with in terms of physically being ready for the start of the season and going in and out of spells. But Can you give us an insight into what it's like for a batter to not be able to get into a flow of playing and the challenges you face in that area?
Yeah, I think the as you say, like you want to find rhythm and you want to find flow with your batting, especially the beginning of the season, and you want to try and get outside onto the grass as often as possible as well. Indoors is not ideal. The surfaces are very different to what you experience outside in terms of timing. The ball coming off the wicket, obviously it's a bit slower, and you don't get as much sort of sideways movement in an indoor facility as you would outside. So yeah, adjusting to that, and I think for me personally, I tried to not hit many balls inside. If it was just do drill work. By the time we had sort of got close, within sort of a week of the season, I didn't really want to be hitting much inside. But guys who like to hit a lot of balls, obviously for them it's going to be more sort of inside because it was just so wet. For us personally, for us at Derbyshire, it was so wet outside. We weren't even able to get into the nets. We could get into the middle for a couple of net sessions before the season started. Neil did a great job with getting us out there, but the outfield was just like mud. So we weren't able to get outside to get any sort of rhythm to the batting. And it's likewise, as you said, for the bowlers, miles on the legs and sort of getting ready for the season. Same thing with batters. It's still about trying to get yourself into rhythm and ready to face that first ball.
How much is you talked a little bit about preparation there. So how much has your preparation developed and changed as your career has gone on? What areas of it have you particularly developed?
Yeah, I think I hit less balls now in my preparation, and I'm more specific to what I want to achieve going into a game. So looking at the bowlers that we're facing, and my game plan, what I'm wanting to plan A, how I want to play them, and then obviously plan B from that. But I'm going in looking at. I'm probably a lot more. I would say a lot more savvy with how I do things in my preparation, and not just sort of hitting balls for the sake of hitting balls. Where I used to, I think when you're younger, you can afford to do a lot more hitting in terms of grooving and grooving technique. Now I sort of know my game, and it's more around the game plan going into games. So winter preparation. Well, this one was a bit different with all the white ball that I played. But leading up to the red ball season was sort of just making sure that I'm playing the ball late, my balance is good, and then from there it's just game plans and looking at who we're playing in the next game.
You're one of those select group of players in English cricket who plays sort of all those competitions. You play as many championship games as you can. You play Blast, you play the 100, and when you're available, you would play 50 over as well if we weren't for a scheduling clash. What do you kind of focus on when you're trying to transition between those formats? The cliche goes that you're in a mode, but what do you actually focus on from a technical perspective and I guess a mindset one as well?
Yeah, I think obviously when you're switching from red ball to white ball, for me it's obviously a little bit more sort of trying to get the six hitting mode. I manipulate the ball pretty well anyway, whether it's red ball or white ball. So it's more it's more trying to get the six hitting mode into my game, and then it's just it's more the mental switch than actually the physical switch, because preparation wise and in terms of like striking the ball, you do all that prep in your off season, in your run up to competitions. It's more the mental side of switching between the two, and it's to how you think game plan wise and that side of things, as opposed to the physical side of things. Especially mid season when you start switching between your T20 on a Friday night, and then you've got to play a 4-day game on a Saturday or a Sunday. how you adjust to that. And I think you do see there's a lot more positive cricket from a lot of players when you get to that time of the season. Either wickets are happening quite quickly in the red ball stuff, or the rate is at 4.5, 5 and over. It's just the nature of the mode that you're in, and the mindset that you're in during that period. And the principles of batting still, for a batter, the principles of batting still apply across the formats. It's all about your timing, your balance, and I think for me, yeah, being able to just adjust mentally between the formats is the key, and having a game plan, a specific game plan in place for that is something that I've been able to develop over my time.
You're 15 years now into a county cricket career. What is it about this lifestyle, this weird period of the year that keeps you coming back year after year? Has kept you coming here for 15 years now.
Yeah, I mean, the thrill of trying to score the 100 or the match winning knock that's going to get you over the line to win a game. I think that for me, I love getting out and competing, and I think that's something that keeps me coming back and keeps me trying to keeps me on course to trying to improve. I think if I didn't feel like I was contributing or even improving, my white ball game, I think arguably has got better and better over the last sort of 5-10 years. And I think that drive and motivation to keep improving is and to keep aiming for success is what keeps me going.
You've had a lot of during that period. Naturally, you've had a lot of head coaches at Derbyshire. I think you're on to number 7 now since in your tenure at the club. So therefore, it's probably not continuity that keeps you there. So what is it about Derbyshire that's kept you there? I'm sure you've had lots of potentially offers to either go elsewhere or to do other things with your English summer. So what is it about that club that keeps you there or has kept you there for so long?
We love living here in Derbyshire. Ever since Carla and I moved here in 2009, we have absolutely loved it. It's a beautiful county to live in, and such a family-oriented club. I think that's something for me that really has been so special. Is you being a slightly smaller club, you get to know everyone who's at the club, from all the staff, on-field, off-field staff, and I think having that personal relationship with everyone really is special.
Obviously, that period, and if you don't mind me saying, hasn't been dominated with a lot of winning, particularly since the club were relegated. So it must be something. It's something you need. Something. It must be something deeper then that kind of keeps you there.
Yeah, it is, but it's still the drive to win, and to do it with Derbyshire would be super special because of what the club means to me and how long I've been here for. So, and there's always you go into every season with a belief and an expectation that you can win, and I think the Mickey is a winner at the moment. The group of players that we have, Mickey's brought guys in who have won trophies and elsewhere as well. So this year is pretty exciting. I know we haven't had the start that we would have wanted necessarily, but I think those are the sort of for me the motivation is to strive for that success. I've been fortunate, obviously, enough to be able to play in other competitions with teams that have near enough. Well, I've lost the final a couple of times with Manchester in the 100. Got close there, but yeah. So to be able to play in other competitions where we've made finals and got close to winning. I still haven't won many trophies, but I'd like to win a few more. And that certainly is a drive for success. And with Derbyshire, I think it'll be pretty special to do that and achieve success. look at the history of the club, there haven't been many trophies won. I've been a part of winning one of those 6 trophies, I think, that we've won as a club. So to win another one will be pretty special.
How much has Mickey, I guess, sort of extended your relationship with the sport? You're very much in the autumn of your career, but how much has he kind of galvanized this sector of it?
Yeah, I think hugely, actually. Before
In
he
what
came
ways as
in,
well? In what ways has he done that?
well, certainly from a pushing me to achieve even more. From a expectation level, I think when he came in, he certainly lifted everyone at the club, not just myself, but in terms of in that first year, a lot of players really picked up and improved their performances, and I was definitely one of them. I think I got to a stage where I needed to kick on again and improve even more, and Mickey certainly drove that. His winning mentality and expectation of individuals, the way he manages each and every single one of us, I think is a testament to that and to what he's achieved as a coach. And for me, yeah, I think the motivation levels were improved by how he pushed me. He pushed me to drive the team forward, from on the field of in the field, and obviously with the bat, and I think, yeah, certainly off the field as well. No, he's been fantastic for me personally, but also for the club. I think the mentality has certainly improved in the expectation side of things. We haven't achieved yet. We've made improvements, but we haven't achieved yet what we want to achieve. But yeah, that for me, in the last 2-3 years, I think I may have flagged off and finished if it hadn't have been for how he's pushed me and driven me forward over the last couple of years.
I was looking back on previous interviews that the Cricketer have done with yourself, and we did one in 2020, I think, during one of the lockdown periods, and one in 2022. So I'm delighted that in 2024 we've retained that symmetry. But one thing that you spoke about in both of those conversations was your faith and your relationship with it. I wonder, to kind of move on that conversation, how does it help you deal with life as an elite sports person where there are so many peaks and troughs?
Yeah, I mean, it does, having that stability and belief and faith in in anyone's life really does support and help, and having the family support as well around it. Our kids, for them to grow up in an environment of faith, and having that at home, going to that outside of cricket is really important as well. I think I try and live my life by the Lord, and obviously try and set an example to the rest of the team and the players, and anyone who I sort of come into contact with and meet. And yeah, but I think the thing for me is also to set an example for my kids and the next generation as well. And having that faith then really does, as you say, I think the game, that with the peaks and troughs of the game, having that stability helps both sort of mentally and physically to be able to keep driving forward. It does, yeah. The game of cricket obviously tests you at times, but that is one sort of constant for me that really sort of helps me from a motivational point of view, but also from all aspects of life, family life, team with the team, and also sort of life outside of the game as well. So yeah, it's pretty important to me, and obviously it's something that, as you say, like really helps from a mental point of view in this game.
How much does it help you understand the good times and cope with the bad?
I think, yeah, I mean that's probably the main thing. I would say over the years, it certainly has got me to appreciate that the good times and the bad times, no matter what, no matter, even when you're going through the good times, um, it's still to try and stay level and balanced in your life, and my faith certainly helps me with that, and keeps me grounded, keeps me on the ground, keeps me grounded whether I'm doing well or doing badly. Because yeah, for me there are bigger things to life than cricket, and certainly my faith does teach me that.
Naturally, you've been in a county game that's seen, it seems to be in a permanent state of flux. But what's the biggest change that you've seen over that period? And I guess what is the one thing that has stayed the same during that as well?
Yeah, I mean, probably I would say the biggest change has been obviously the white ball cricket. So the 100 coming in, and the franchise game, how that has sort of taken over a lot more than it was when I first started. When I first started, you pretty much had the RPL, and that was, I think the Big Bash was maybe just starting, but we had our blast as opposed to franchise competitions. So the franchise game has probably been the biggest change, and how that's impacted on county cricket. I think for me, something that probably hasn't changed is how the seasons feel in terms of the 4-day T20, or just all the cricket, how it just rolls into one. It's always rolled into one for me. You've always had to adapt between switching formats, and obviously, I think it's no secret that the money in the game has improved as well, and that's something that has been a big change, particularly in the last in the last 15 years with the franchise and with the money coming into the game because of the franchise competitions, and I think that's something that really has changed the game. If you
When
look
you
at it,
say,
number one actually
yeah,
is looking at it. Number one's actually the women's game. In the 15 years, the women's game has taken off more than anything else. And I've got a couple of daughters who love their cricket as well, and for them and for young girls, the game is so much more accessible, and to achieve a career in the game is a lot more realistic for young girls, and that probably wasn't the case when I started county cricket.
when you talk about the season rolling into one, is that
Yeah,
is that a good thing?
that's it. Well, I would say it's a good question, because I'd say by the time the end of the season comes, physically you are finished, and the winters have always been there to prepare for that. Now with franchise tournaments and competitions, there's not as much time to physically necessarily build up to a season, because you're always sort of topping up and getting ready for the next competition. So it's a lot different in terms of how prep works now compared with when I started. You could go and have 6 months in Australia or South Africa, or you can spend the winter here and sort of build up for an April start. Whereas now there's so much cricket in the winter, and so many of the county players are playing abroad, that the preparation is very different. Is it a good thing that it all rolls into one? Well, I think yes, it is, because we have to make the most of what we have here in the summer. We don't get a lot of good weather and stuff through the summer, so we have to make the most of it and try and get as much cricket in as possible, for the supporters, for people who want to come down and watch, and for the younger generation to see us play. So I do think I say roll into one, but yeah, I do think it's a good thing. We've got to make the most of the summers, and Yes, it can be tough on players at times, and the travel, especially around T20s when there's a lot of travel in between, and games are back to back and that sort of stuff. So it can be tough and can be difficult during those times of the season. But I think for us, we are, well, the job is entertainment, and we're trying to entertain, and we'll strive to keep doing so as best as we possibly can, in and around the schedule that we've got.
That leads me quite nicely into the next question about, you know, the way that players structure their cricket and their careers now. Would you go about your career the same way you did if you were starting now? And I guess, how would you advise a prospective young player to go about sort of building the foundations of their career?
So I wouldn't necessarily do it the same as what I did, because I probably revolved my career around red ball cricket as a youngster, as most my age probably would have done. We didn't really see the T20 bubble coming, but yeah, I think I would certainly have a lot more focus on striking the cricket ball and making sure that I have a swing to hit the ball out the ground. But as I said, like the principles of batting are still the same whether you're playing white ball or red ball. So being able to have a solid defense. I know in this RPL, there's been no solid defenses. I think the last 2 weeks I haven't seen a score. Oh, and in fact, yesterday there was a score under 200. But before that, every score is over 200. But in saying that, like when you do get on difficult wickets in white ball cricket, you've got to be able to have a technique that can deal with a moving ball. And having a solid defense is important. So I would definitely have tried to improve my ball striking at a younger age, because I only developed that sort of mid to late 20s, even to my 30s. I was still trying to improve my striking and six hitting. So I'd have done that earlier, definitely. But I think that's something that the younger generation are doing, and it's just, for me, for the younger generation now, it's to still understand that the basic principles of batting still apply. It's not all about hitting it out the ground. Yes, you want to be able to hit it out the ground, but you have to have the stable base, the balance, and the technique. And you have to be able to defend as well, because if you get into big games, when the ball's moving around a lot, if you haven't got the defensive game for it, you're going to come unstuck.
Yeah, the IPL hasn't exactly been an advocate for back and across, has it?
No.
In the last couple of weeks. Speaking from a technical point of view, obviously you've come from a hockey background. Now, I know you've spoken about this a bit previously, but I'm sure our listeners and our viewers would be interested to hear about how you kind of apply those skills while batting, really.
So yeah, I think for me personally, and how my body moves physically, I kind of have quite a rotational swing. So I'm not. If you see me hit the ball through cover, it's more of a slap as opposed to an Ian Bell elbow up cover drive. So I pretty much move across as opposed to moving up and down, and obviously hockey probably had a part to play in it, and I use my wrists a lot when I strike the ball, and that's quite a big part of my game. So playing spin, sweeping, reverse sweeping, just natural sort of hockey shots for me, and it's definitely helped against spin. And then yeah, I think definitely having that sport like hockey as a youngster has had a huge impact on my technique personally. But they are, as I say, they are very different. Hockey's rotational, and cricket, you've still got to hit with a straight bat at times. This week was probably the most I've used my top hand in about 10 years, not being able to grip the bat properly with the bottom hand. But I think technique wise for me, basic principles of playing the ball under the eyes and getting the head towards the ball, and being balanced. I wouldn't necessarily, if anyone's watching, I wouldn't necessarily copy my technique. Maybe the principles of my technique, but but not how open I stand. I've got quite a unique stance. I've got a unique pickup. I have rhythm to my batting. So when I tap my bat, my last tap I think is probably after the release of the ball when the bowler's bowling. As I'm tapping the ground. But it's all for me about rhythm to pick the bat up to then go. Where some people will sort of stand and just hold the bat up and be able to play from there. I like to have that flow and that rhythm to my batting. And it can go wrong because when the timing's slightly out, everything goes in different directions, and that happens at times. But it's sort of honing back down to the basic principles of trying to play that ball. For me, looking straight and playing the ball is the two fundamentals that I try and concentrate on in most of my game plans in red ball cricket. White ball cricket's probably slightly different. I would say I open my stance up a little bit more in white ball cricket. Red ball cricket, I'd close it a fraction. So I've got little changes between the two in terms of technique. But yeah, I think it's the basic principles that you want to make sure that you develop. You can add your little bit of flair to your unique flair to that.
I'm sure our audience will be logging on to NV Play now to try and replicate that during the next couple of rounds and the remainder of the summer. Just to finish off, I mean, how much thought and attention are you giving to what the future looks like, particularly the immediate future? And I guess where do you want to? This is not meant to sound like a job interview, but where do you think you're going to be in sort of 5 years or so?
Oh, it's a good question. It's a really good question. We've as a family we've been having a lot of chats about it of late. But yeah, I think I would love to coach. And I've done my level 4. So I have sort of got that behind me and am ready to transition when I feel the time is right. In terms of where I'm going to coach and what I'm going to coach, I'm going to wait for the opportunity as opposed to sort of say this is exactly what I want to do. And it's also not necessarily something that I'll do straight away. I might want to take a break in a year or two, sort of maybe out of the game. There's a few options on the table, which I'm looking at, and it might be sort of getting out of the game for a couple of years. I don't think I will do that, but that could be an option, depending on timings. I think it's a tricky one, but as I say, like coaching is my passion, and it's something that I definitely want to do, and where that's going to be at what level, whether it's county cricket, franchise cricket, at a school, it's still sort of wide open for me, and I'll look at options when the time is right.
Well, Wayne Madsen, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, Nick. Thanks for having me.
And you go well the rest of the summer.
Will do. Thank you.
That was Nick Howson with Derbyshire's Wayne Madsen. We're going to come to Nick Friend first, actually, for his reflections. I think two things that I found particularly interesting. One was him talking about being a hockey player and how his hockey background gives him an unusual technique. He works from kind of left to right rather than up to down, is the way I thought about it in terms of his technique. But then, following on from that, his desire to get into coaching and how, given the kind of traditions of coaching dictate that you coach by the manual, he has a playing background and CV which counteracts that, and how he'd take that into a coaching environment. My second thing was a pure confirmation bias thing for me. Him scoring 100 with an injury, I'm absolutely convinced that people average more when they're injured than when they're fully fit, because whilst they are more physically impaired, they're more mentally freer. So like, I can fail, it doesn't matter. I show you Glenn Maxwell in the World Cup scoring 200. I'll show you Joss Butler in the IPL. I'll show you Wayne Madsen in the County Championship. And I'll show you Ollie Calcott at Southampton University against, I think it was like Oxford or something, about 8 years ago when he did it as well. And I was on the boundary. And when I first thought about it, 3 innings of very similar stature. But I'm going to throw to you now. What were your thoughts? What do you enjoy from Wayne?
I thought you were coming to me first. Presume you're coming to me first because of my hockey background. Having played B team hockey as an 11-year-old.
Yes, that's exactly what I was doing, actually. Yeah,
yeah. I just find, as I said before, I just find him really interesting. I sort of agree on the injury thing, but not with the split webbing, because I mean I love the bit. Well, I mean not love, but the idea of someone having a reaction to an antibiotic during the night, throwing up, calling the head coach, and rocking up the next morning and just churning out 100, while a very long way behind the game. Derby were 20 off for 3 in response to 450, having spent 2 days chasing Joe Root and Harry Brook. Like, you've got to be a certain type of character, I think, just to put all of that together and to turn around and go, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to churn out 100. Like, that whole state of affairs can go. Bear in mind, this is a team that hasn't won a year, and this isn't what I mean. I think it's coming up 600 days, isn't it? And it's a team that has been a new team that's been put together that sort of needed not a result necessarily, but performance, and to put that together, I just think it shows an enormous amount of willpower. But Nick, and when you look at these guys and someone of Madsen's age and experience and the amount he's done in the game, and you wonder how long you want to go on for. If ever you were looking at someone thinking, "Oh, this is last year," you rock up with a split webbing, all the bandages on, all the antibiotics, and you get 100 like that against a very good side. I just think he's, to say, like a really interesting, impressive individual whose record in county cricket is mad, like mad, and gets better. I think he averaged 60. He's averaging 60 odd this year, 50 odd last year, 60 odd the year before. He just churns them out, whether he's got 10 working fingers or not.
And to continue on Derbyshire for a little bit before we go around the clubs, Nick, Howson, something I didn't quite realise. I knew, but I didn't quite realise. Derbyshire, they're winless since July 2022. That, for a technical definition, is bad. It's not good. A long time without a win. There's the penultimate year with Mickey Arthur. Kind of what is the vibe around the club? How do you keep a mood upbeat if you're being so winless?
Yeah, I think with such cutting analysis, with such cutting analysis, I'm just so delighted we got you on board for the podcast. Yeah,
it's all about top line. You got to go top line first.
We had bad and so winless there as the two defining adjectives.
Are you free to write any premium content at any point?
I'm ready to go. Whatever you need.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely outstanding. You should write our headlines. I think there is a degree of the raw numbers don't look amazing. I think there is a degree of mitigation in amongst that. There was that weird situation with the run chase against Leicestershire last year, where it wasn't quite established whether they had time to actually chase. And obviously this year they've been massively hit by weather. You only have to follow Neil Godridge, who's the head groundskeeper at Derbyshire, and follow his Twitter account and see the work that's been put in to get that ground together, to know how much cricket they've lost this summer. That said, clearly the run is not ideal. I think they really struggled to take 20 wickets in a game, which it's not going to win you many games when you can't do that. They didn't do that at all last year. I think Mickey there's been a huge overhaul in terms of the squad there. I think it was 15 players have come and gone since the summer. Although Mickey Arthur thinks he's got the squad there that he finally wanted, I don't think he inherited the squad that he necessarily felt particularly confident in, but therefore has felt he's got that now. Nevertheless, there's still some wrinkles there that need ironing out, and yeah, it's not a great run. I think this week against Sussex is absolutely vitally important. It looks like they're going to get at least a couple of days of clear weather, which they haven't had a lot of. At least successive days, which they haven't had a lot of this year. So I think it's a huge week for them, not wanting to sort of focus too much on the fixtures. And when you've got someone like, I think Madsen playing through the pain barrier as he did. Yes, we talk about sports people being wide in a certain way. But I think there's almost a layer underneath that. And I think when you've got a player who's willing to play through the pain barrier like he did, our viewers would have seen the injury that he took and the bandaging that's required to cover that up and the pain he was going through to just to play that innings. When you've got an individual who's willing to go through that kind of barrier just to get a draw, that I think that says an awful lot about the culture that's been developed there under Mickey Arthur. So I think that bodes well, and I'm sure that if they get that bowling attack together and firing, then that winless run won't be too far behind.
Should have dropped that
spin
catch,
it another way. Should have held it, Wayne. Come on, to spin it another way. Unbeaten in 2024. So winless, unbeaten. Glass half full, glass half empty. It is. We have had this kind of horrible. I don't know if horrible is the right word, but this combination of weather and this is a statistic from Xavier Voigt-Hill, who works for CricViz, that April 2024 had the highest county championship batting average of all time for any month, with more than 8 matches starting, which is 8 matches is quite a lot, and that batting average was 38.9. So combine that with a lot of weather, a lot of draws, 3 of which have belonged to Derbyshire, and 3 of which have belonged to Derbyshire without lose deploy. We're going to speak about deploy twice in this podcast. Once, it's the second time because he played potentially one of the greatest shots all time, which Nick Friend witnessed. But in a Derbyshire context, like Nick Howson, how have they settled? What does life after deploy look like for Derbyshire?
Yeah, I think some observers, me included, were perhaps guilty of maybe underplaying how significant it would be. I think part of that was down to the fact that they brought in David Lloyd, an experienced figure from Glamorgan, who's slotted right in as captain, and that felt like a really natural fit from the outset. But clearly, he deploys the trajectory of his career, the way he makes his runs, and the importance to that order means that he does leave a chasm there, and that's going to take time to cover. I mean, they clearly have a lot of batting depth in that. Like you look at Guest, Anaj Dow certainly churned them out previously as well. I don't see any reason why they can't cover for that. But yeah, it at this point it does look like there was, as I said, there was a huge turnover in players over the winter, and that does feel like a real loss, particularly as he's gone to essentially a promotion rival, or certainly a rival in Div 2 at Middlesex.
And just quickly before we move on to kind of Middlesex, in like 2 words, what does a successful season for Derbyshire look like? Or even 1 word, give me a position. Are there any risk or chance of pushing for the top, or is it kind of a season of mid-table mediocrity, for want of a better words, kind of the aspiration?
As an expert yourself of the 1-word analysis, I can understand why you've asked me this one.
I love 1-word analysis. Analyses.
I think competitive would be a good way of describing it. I think you're competitive if you're in there. If you start September, I think in the promotion race, or certainly not out of touch, then I think that's all you can ask for. And then you've got 3 or 4 games or 3 or 4 rounds to get yourself into shape. I think that's what they'll be asking for. Get that first win, get that monkey off their back, so to speak, and then go from there. I think so. Competitive would certainly be where I would go with that.
And Nick Friend, moving on to Middlesex, where deploy has gone to. Picture the scene. We're at the county ground in Bristol. The hybrid pitch, which means there's pace on the ball. It's whipping through. It's fizzing through. Marchant de Lange bowling at 98 miles an hour. And deploy skips down the track and puts it back over his head. Out of the stadium, out of the ground. That, for those new to the sport, is 6 runs. What was it like being there? How's deploy settled in there? And what is the fuss with this hybrid pitch? Is it worth our time and attention? Is it something that is going to be good for the game?
Deploy's averaging 80.6, by the way, in the last was the start of last season in first class cricket, and from next season I think is eligible for England, which might be a bit of sort of watch this space kind of thing. I know that England are English cricket has just been very impressed by him, isn't it? I mean, was this last year that it was 125 grand signing by Southern Brave for 100, wasn't it? And he's obviously played as an overseas player out in the SA20 for Jerbo Super Kings, and he had a pretty big winter of franchise stuff, the ILT20, PSL, as well this winter. He is just really good and really impressive, and actually he's quite short. So I thought he'd be much taller when I first went because he absolutely whacks it. And I promise you, and it wasn't just me calling this the best shot I've ever seen. There were players on either side who, so we'll get on the hybrid stuff in a sec, but like there was a bit of pace, there was a bit of bounce at least in this pitch. And Marshall and Lang were taking a first inning six for. He's an enormous human. He's like half man, like half like freight train. Like he bowls quick, by any standards. And Middlesex were, I think, effectively like minus 60 for 2 at the time or something. And he just charged down the pitch. And if you've been to Bristol, these flats out the back of the Ashley Down Road end, and he just whacked it, and no one knew where the ball had gone until there was this enormous thud. There was the ball hitting essentially the roof of the flats and bouncing back down onto one of the balconies. And De Lange, I don't still yet know if he was appreciative or goading, but he just stood in the middle of the pitch and just clapped for quite an intimidatingly long time. But it's not the first time Duploy's done this. A couple of weeks ago, I was at Lord's and it was really grim and grey and cold, and there were about 3 overs left in the day. And Ethan Bam was padded up as Middlesex night watcher, and it was quite an important stage of the game. And Duploy just ran down the pitch at Jordan Thompson and belted him over extra cover, like showing all 3 stumps. He is exceptionally talented, exceptionally good. Bowles handled it off arm spin as well and took an outrageous catch, a second slip in one hand as well. So yeah, good player. More on him to come, I'm sure, over the coming weeks. But
good player and taller than you'd expect. So congratulations
I said
to him all around. Shorter, sorry.
No, I said no, it was shorter, wasn't it? I mean, sorry, it was shorter. I hope I said that.
All the good stuff.
I mean,
he's almost 10 out of 10.
Was the shot as good as yours?
I would argue that my conditions were tougher. No,
I agree.
Green.
You weren't on a hybrid pitch.
I certainly wasn't on a hybrid pitch. But the seamer I was facing was very slow. Shout out if you're listening. I don't know his last name. But no, the hybrid was interesting, and it's interesting with the way you guys have talked about it so far here is that the reason it's been brought in is actually nothing to do with the reason it's been trialled this year. So you've been allowed to use it in white ball cricket for a while in professional cricket in the UK, but you've not been allowed to use it in the Championship, and that is primarily because people don't have any real anecdotal data on what it looks like over 4 days and whether it deteriorates, whether it brings spin into play, whether it goes up and down, whether it produces results. Now that sounds quite churlish in the context of what we've seen in the last month of a load of turf wickets producing 12 wickets in 4 days. But yeah, the reason it's been trialled is not to see if we can make it look like Australia. It's not for the same reason as Kookaburra. It's far more because of there is belatedly an appreciation of the fixture congestion that exists in the domestic game, both with men's and women's cricket being played essentially at the same grounds, 4 comps in the men's game, etc., 3 comps in the women's game. It's a lot of cricket. It's not easy for ground staff, and the weather, frankly, is garbage. So the idea is that this makes it easier. But the happy accident might just be that depending on the ground, it's not foolproof. It won't be the same everywhere. That is worth saying. Is that the hybrid bounces, and it didn't do an awful lot laterally, I don't think, in the game. But if you look at it was one of the better draws I've seen in county cricket. And it did, as I say, sort of accidentally, I think, the vast majority of things that people have been looking for from the Kookaburra experiment. It rewarded the quicks, it rewarded the tall bowlers, and it forced batters to play in a slightly different way. I've never seen more batters out on the back foot in county cricket. If you were to go to the highlights and look at some of the wickets that fell, Tom Helm getting Ollie Price, sort of splicing one off a leg to the keeper. You had guys bounced out. You had Max Holden top edge hooking over the keeper's head. You had Dom Goodman, who's 6'6", bouncing guys out, gloving Duploy with one that you look to leave and just bounce on him. Say 6 for De Lange in the first innings. Zumakta, who's well over 6 foot as well, bowling 85 plus. Ajit Singh Dale, who was clocked at sort of 87, 88 on the first day as well. And it's the most dangerous I've seen Tom Helmut for a while. It made for a really interesting game. And Mark Alain's view afterwards, and he was really good on this, was that it would spin as well. They didn't pick a specialist spinner because Zafagoa went down injured in the warm-up. But his view was that actually, at the very least, you'd get a lot of bounce with the spinner, which Cam, as a great spin like yourself would know, is half the threat. Even if you do bowl round arm, ugly off spin as yourself.
Don't knock it.
But bounce is part of it. And as I say, it made for a really interesting game. Elaine said afterwards that the intel they'd have from the ground staff, so this is the best time to use it because it is better when there's a bit of moisture in it, and it does get a bit temperamental when it's a bit drier. So, as I say, this isn't one size fits all. It won't change the game in itself. Sorry, on its own, and you won't have 18 counties using it 14 games a year. But if we're looking to produce a few games like this that really do replicate something that's not quite traditional county cricket, and certainly not Bristol, this was it. I mean, Deploy afterwards compared it to growing up in South Africa. It made for a really interesting game. But crucially, it didn't mean it was impossible to bat on. There were two brilliant hundreds from Max Holden and Ryan Higgins. Ryan Higgins has scored more runs already this season than about 14 of the Middlesex squad did last season.
That's good.
That is, he's got 448, and I think we've got a real race on to 1,000 before June, which is not happened for a while, is it?
So there's been quite a lot of news out of Gloucestershire. Actually, they ousted their chair, who was voted out earlier this week, as reported by the Telegraph, and lots of other people, because it happened. It's news. And Nick Friend of The Cricketer. But very sadly, there's also Ben Wells has had to retire at the age of 23 after being diagnosed with a rare heart condition in a very, sad, but I don't know if romantic is the right word, but his final innings in professional cricket is his sole professional 100. And there's something kind of poetic about that, and also incredibly sad. Nick, you cover Gloucestershire a lot. You know a lot about what's kind of going on at the club. Kind of what is the reaction from Gloucestershire County Cricket Club?
Well, only, as you say, sort of like just real sadness. Firstly, because a very tight-knit dressing room. There are a lot of lads of sort of similar age who are very close, and this came up through routine pre-season screening, so it's an enormous shock to everyone. Obviously, not least to Ben. There's I don't know. I thought Ben's there was a very good Gloucester statement. There's also a very good, very thoughtful open letter from Ben that thought covered it off really well, and that it's really sad and it is tragic for himself and the journey he go through to reach professional cricket. And I think in his case, he didn't get a contract at 18. He kept on working, got one at 21, played a fair bit of twos cricket, a couple of counties, has had a load of injuries along the way, a lot of hamstring trouble and stuff like that. Has worked bloody hard. And actually, whenever I've been there, whenever he's been fit, he's always lapping the ground and, has worked, as a lot of guys, everyone does, has worked his arse off. And but as he said in that same statement, there is a bit of good fortune in a pretty morbid way, in that he's a professional cricketer, so he gets routinely scanned at the start of every season. But a lot of people only find out they've got this condition, which is the same one that James Taylor retired from, unfortunately, when it's too late. As he says, I mean, it's hopefully there comes a time where he can sort of look at it through that lens that actually this has saved his life. And he specifically mentioned the doctors and his gratitude to them for picking this up. But there's something very different about, I think, retiring from being a seamer, retiring from a knee problem and something like this that is so shocking and so sudden and just has those connotations as well. And you talk about his last 100. I mean, it wasn't just 100; it was a 72 ball 100 made with the torn hamstring. He'd torn his hamstring in the field, limped around the field, and then came out to bat at 5 at 80 for 3, and whacked a 70 ball ton, chased 270 in 38 overs. Hadn't done that much yet in his 25 games, but started to break through in the blast last year. He was one of those guys who, a bit Smeedish, and that you'd watch him a couple of times and sort of become obsessed by the way he plays, proper whacker, fearless, particularly in his white ball cricket. Played one Champo game, kept wicket as well. Fundamentally, a really sad story to say, but with that one, slight tinge. I don't know what the right word is, but knowing that that the technology and having the opportunity to be scanned at the start of every season has, as he said himself, has probably saved his life in the long run, but doesn't stop it being terribly sad for both himself and I think a load of people at that club he's very close to.
What does Nick Howson like? What does his support system look like now? Kind of, as you said, it the kind of silver lining here is that he was able to be checked. It was picked up early, but also something that's so sad is unlike James Taylor, who was diagnosed later in his career with a CV of work already behind him, which probably gives a bit of not catharsis, but kind of consolation that you go, right, I've played for England, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve in the game to an extent. What does his support system look like from the PCA going forward here?
Yeah, I think, again, like Nick, it's not a positive in this situation, but there is a silver lining in that the mechanisms and the support systems in place are far better than they used to be. They were good, actually, when James Taylor and his career in the PCA came in and helped him a lot, and we've seen that play out in numerous coaching roles. He's assistant coach at Leicestershire and helped them to the One Day Cup last year, and obviously he was chief selector with England as well. And without that support system, in the same way that without the screening, he will be really well supported. I think you'll see ultimately with those mechanisms in place, it means that Ben, who's got got degree in physics, I think from Exeter, business analytics masters, which I think he finished in 2022 now, means that like his cricket career may well be over, but that's not. But there's still an awful lot that he can be supported in his, and he will be supported in his future ambitions, even if they're not, even if they're away from the playing field. As Nick says, it's terribly sad, but we can look at the screening process that Nick is right to observe that not everyone has access to, and we should be glad that ultimately they are there to catch this kind of thing at the same time, but also that he will be supported in the next stage of his life and won't just be abandoned in his early 20s to kind of get on with life on his own. He's going to be given that support. So yeah, we can reflect on that with a degree of positivity while also lamenting this awful situation that's beset him.
No, everyone at the cricketer obviously wishes Ben all the best, and yeah, really sad news. To return to kind of on-field matters, in Division 2, it's an extraordinary looking table after 4 rounds. Just one draw. One draw. Lots more than one draw. It's just the one result. Yorkshire remain winless when many would have kind of tipped them to be at the top, especially with the kind of having Harry Brook and you get
2 results.
Nick Friend showing 2 results. I'm looking at the table right here. 2 results. 1 win apiece for Middlesex and Sussex.
That's the one.
That is the one. And
2.
1 defeat for Yorkshire and Gloucestershire. That creates two results. And then let me get my notes back up. But one of the kind of success stories of the league is Leicestershire after kind of going for another promotion push. Nick Howson, is this they've got the most batting points in the country. They've got a bit of a depleted bowling attack at the moment, but seems they're going to have a bit of a battle for Middlesex. Could we be seeing the Foxes in Division 1 for 2025?
The old Sky Bet Championship Division 2 double, eh?
What time?
The Maresca Alfonso double.
Absolutely, lesser spotted. I think one thing it is that whether Leicestershire go up or not, or whether they are still in the conversation at the start of September, although to be fair, I think the final set of games starts at the end of August, doesn't it? Whether they're part of that conversation or not, I think this is kind of a tribute to really the sea change that's happened at Grace Road really since Paul Nixon left. I think it's a tribute to kind of the culture there. So they won the One Day Cup. They went on the way and won the One Day Cup last year in that sort of real dramatic final at Trent Bridge that Nick was at. And they've taken that into the Red Ball game. I think that's always been the ultimate challenge. Like we've seen Leicestershire challenge white ball so often over the last sort of 10, 12 years or so. But they've never translated that into Red Ball game. We were talking earlier about Derbyshire's long stints outside of Division 2. It's even longer for Leicestershire. It's a long time since they were last promoted. Last time since they played cricket in the top tier, since the two-tier structure came in. And they're doing so, firstly, they're making themselves really hard to beat, which they've not been, which historically they've not been, particularly under Nixon. And if they could try and blend that with a couple of wins, and we look at the table already, I know it's after 4 games, or some teams have played 3, but after 4 games, after 4 rounds. And like, how many wins are you going to need to go up? Not a huge number, right? Yeah, well,
that's not new though, is it? I mean, last year, that's sort of a recurring theme in Division 2, isn't it? Last few years,
yeah.
I think I'm saying that Sussex won. Did they win once last year and come 3rd? I want to say
Sussex had 10 draws out of 14. I remember that. It was remarkable. Remarkable.
And they've done this thing where they've made themselves. Firstly, they've made themselves reliable batting, as you said. Like, they've got the most batting points in the country. 9 players averaging 50 or more, which is astonishing. And ultimately, that's half the battle. That is, as we just touched upon, it's half the battle in Div 2. And they're doing so. There's no coincidence they haven't won any games. They've got a depleted attack. Josh Hole's not really been available. Rayan Ahmed missed a couple of games. Him not going to, we're delighted that he's not going initially, it seems, to the T20 World Cup, because they're going to have him now for more or less the duration of the season, you would think. Chris Wright's not been available either. So, and they've got lots of options in that department. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by there. It's not that important that they're top at the moment, but what it is important is that there appears to be the mentality completely shifted there from being a team that just sort of treads water or frankly, bumps up the bottom of the table to one that's going to definitely compete at this level now, and they're going to be there or thereabouts, you would expect. At the end of certainly the start of September, as they were last year.
I think the thing that gets me is that they're an exciting team. I enjoy watching Leicestershire when I get to see them play. Rishi Patel's kind of coming to his own over the last 18 months. Nixon actually 2.5 years ago said he expected Patel to play for England in the next 4 years. And although that still seems a while away, he's performing very well. He's not in the side at the moment, but Sol Budden just so exciting to watch in the One Day Cup when he is. Where he just whacks it. He just whacks it. He belts it.
Him and Rishi Patel together as a pair.
It's just a wonderfully watchable cricket team. You've got Marcus Harris and Peter Handscombe as Aussie like pros. Marcus Harris has signed on for another couple of games. You've got more solidity. Ben Cox with the gloves now. You've got Rayan Ahmed bowling leggies. Louis Kimber's another lad who just belts it, and he got picked for that team by Dan Weston, the analyst, who kind of analysed the best of second 11 runs, and Louis Kimber was the one that kind of came to the top as one of the most exciting players within that realm. Anyway,
Ben Mike,
Leicestershire.
Yeah, I think
Ben Mike's Ben. Go on, sorry.
I think just on that, like, I don't think it's really going to matter what the results are this year, because either way, Leicestershire's fan base is going to watch like young players developing at the same, really exciting players developing at the right time. You talk about Buddinger, Rishi Patel, Rayan, Josh Hole, who I spoke to in pre-season, who's he's really exciting, tall left arm, quick, who Rob Key's really excited about, who we've not seen much of. They've got players coming through, Roman Walker, people like that. It's going to be really exciting just to watch that team, regardless of really whether they win or not. And that's really not often been the case about Leicestershire. That they're actually, I was talking to one of our colleagues from a rival publication the other day, and sort of rolled their eyes when Leicestershire came up. I think that they're really shifting that reputation, and maybe that's ultimately the most important thing here.
No, I feels like from my time growing up, watching the game and being a fan, rightly or wrongly, Leicestershire were often the butt of the joke. Anyway, nobody covers county cricket like the Cricketer, and you can get access to our coverage of all 18 teams online from as little as £3.99 a month. Our own top team of county championships have now won the outstanding online coverage of Domestic Cricket Prize at the ECB Domestic Cricket Journalism Awards for 6 years running. So you don't have to take our word for it. Just click in the show notes to subscribe. That is it for the final week. I hope not. For this week. Oh, what a wonderful way to end the show. That I've culled it for the rest of the summer. That is the end of the county conversation.
You got 3 of the words right in that sentence.
Yeah, I know. And what was
that it is final week.
Really well. Hey, there's a reason why I'm the host. It's for my clear, concise communication skills. Anyway, thank you both to Nick and Nick. Not really thank you to me. That was a carnage ending, but we look forward to talking to you next week. Goodbye.